12-year-old Eli Carter had one rule from his late father. When you hear the roar of engines, son, know I'm watching over you. A circle of dust swirled beneath the hot afternoon sun. Eli Carter lay on the ground, his cheek pressed into gravel, the taste of iron and dirt filling his mouth. Around him, laughter, cruel, sharp, echoing. "Say it again," one of the older boys sneered. "Say you don't belong here." Eli didn't answer. He just clutched the small metal dog tag around his neck, his father's. Then, somewhere far beyond the horizon, a sound began to rise. Low, deep, and growing engines. The bullies paused, faces twisting. The sound thickened, multiplied, a wall of thunder rolling closer. Eli lifted his head, squinting through sunlight. A dozen chrome beasts emerged from the dust, roaring like something out of another world, and when the lead biker removed his helmet, Eli's heart stopped, because hanging from the man's vest was a tag just like his father's. Before we go further, I want to ask you, if you saw someone being bullied, would you step in or stay silent? The sound of engines still echoed in Eli Carter's mind, but before that day, before the roar that changed everything, he was just another kid in a town that forgot how to be kind. Eli lived on the edge of Brookdale, a quiet southern town where silence said more than words. He was small for 12, thin, polite, and quieter than most kids his age. He lived with his mother, Denise, in a faded blue house on the outskirts of town, the kind with chipped paint, a tired porch swing, and a mailbox that leaned like it had given up. To most people, he was just that kid. But to his mother, he was what was left of her husband, Sergeant Nathan Carter, a decorated soldier who never made it home. Nathan's photo hung in their hallway, young, proud in his uniform, smiling like he could hold the world together. And beneath that photo, Eli's dog tag rested on a hook, his father's tag now his own, a reminder that strength didn't always have to shout. But Brookdale wasn't a place that understood quiet strength. Not when you looked like Eli. He'd learned early that some smiles were just masks for hate. The cashier who double-checked his mother's bills. The neighbors who forgot to invite them to town picnics. The boys from Ridgeway Middle, who looked at him like he'd wandered into their world by mistake. Still, Eli tried to stay invisible. He read comic books, fixed old RC cars, and rode his rusted bike to the edge of town to watch trains pass. He liked the noise. It drowned out the words people said behind his back. But on that Friday, hiding didn't work. It started on the shortcut behind the abandoned gas station, a stretch of cracked pavement and tall weeds where the town's kids liked to hang out. Eli cut through it every day on his way home from school. He didn't see the boys waiting. Travis, Cole, and Derek, all older, all bigger, their sneakers white, their laughs louder than the engines that would later save him. Travis was the leader, the kind of kid who never got caught, because his dad sat on the town council. He always carried that smirk, the one that said rules didn't apply to him. "Where you heading, Eli?" Travis called, stepping in front of his bike. Eli's throat tightened. "Home," he mumbled, eyes down. "Home?" Travis mocked. "You mean that shack near the woods?" Cole snickered. "Bet his mom's still waiting for the mailman to bring Daddy home." The laughter cut through Eli's chest. He tried to push past, but Derek kicked the front tire of his bike, sending him tumbling. Gravel scraped his palms. His backpack spilled open. Books, pencils, and a folded photo of his father scattered across the ground. Travis picked it up. "This him?" he sneered, studying the picture. "The big hero? Give it back," Eli said quietly. "Say please." Travis grinned. Eli didn't. He just stood, jaw tight, eyes burning. Travis shrugged and dropped the photo in the dirt. "Guess he wasn't much of a hero if he left you here." The words hit harder than the shove that followed. Eli fell again, dust clouding around him. The laughter blurred. The kicks came next. Not hard enough to break bone, but cruel enough to remind him where he stood. And through the noise, Eli's hand found his father's dog tag. He closed his fingers around it and whispered, "Not a prayer, not a plea, just a promise." "I'm okay, Dad." Then came the sound. At first, it was faint. A growl in the distance. Travis frowned, glancing up. "You hear that?" Cole paused. Probably trucks, but it wasn't. The sound deepened, split into multiple rumbles, heavy and unified. Tires crunched gravel somewhere beyond the weeds. The air changed, dust lifted, and then they appeared. 12 motorcycles burst through the afternoon haze, chrome flashing in the sunlight, leather jackets catching the wind. The engines thundered like rolling storm clouds. The boys froze. The riders slowed to a stop, surrounding the scene like a pack of wolves protecting their own. Eli lay on the ground, blinking against the sun. He counted them, 1, 2, 3, 12. Their patches gleamed, Iron Shadows, MC. One man, tall, broad, with a gray beard and mirrored sunglasses, swung his leg off his bike. He took off his helmet, and when Eli saw what hung from his vest, his breath caught. A dog tag, just like his father's. The man crouched beside him, eyes scanning the dirt, the boys, the bruises. "You okay, son?" Eli nodded slowly, voice trembling. Yes, sir." The man's jaw tightened as he looked at the bullies. "You boys got about 3 seconds to disappear." And for the first time, the ones who used to laugh ran. The engines stayed silent. The wind filled the space they left behind. As the bikes idled, the man extended a hand. "Let's get you home." Eli took it, and as the engines roared back to life, dust rising behind them, one thing became clear. The world had just introduced Brookdale's bullies to a different kind of justice. But Eli didn't know yet. This wasn't a random rescue, because one of those bikers carried a name that his father once spoke. A name tied to a promise made on a battlefield long ago. The bikes thundered down the back roads of Brookdale like an army of steel and thunder. Eli sat on the back of one, his hands clutching the leather jacket in front of him, wind slapping his face, the world blurred, the pain, the laughter, the dust, all swallowed by the roar of engines. They slowed near the town's edge, turning off into a clearing beside the old railway bridge, a hidden spot marked by tire tracks and silence. The bikers parked in a perfect line, chrome catching sunlight like polished armor. Eli climbed off the bike, his knees trembling. The tall man, the one with the gray beard and mirrored glasses, handed him his fallen backpack, now dusted clean. "Name's Hank Dalton," he said, voice gravel deep. "Friends call me Roadman." He nodded to the others. "That's Bull, Rico, Tank, and the rest. Iron Shadows MC. We were on our way through town when we saw some dirtbags picking on you." Eli's voice was small but steady. "Thanks for helping me." Hank tilted his head. "You looked like you didn't need help. You looked like you were just done taking hits." The boy tried to smile, but it faltered. His gaze fell to the dog tag hanging from Hank's vest. "Where'd you get that?" Hank followed his eyes and slowly touched the tag. "This? It belonged to a man I served with. Sergeant Nathan Carter." Eli's heart skipped. "That's my dad." The group went quiet. Hank froze mid-breath, then removed his sunglasses. His eyes were heavy with memories. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. "You're Nate's boy?" Eli nodded. "You knew him?" "Knew him?" Hank said softly. "Your old man saved my life." The other bikers exchanged glances. Rico stepped forward. "Nate Carter? The guy who pulled your squad out near Kandahar?" "The same," Hank said. "We made a promise. If anything ever happened to one of us, we'd look after the other's family." Eli's throat tightened. "So you were—" Hank nodded slowly. "Your dad's brotherhood." The wind caught the edges of Hank's leather cut, revealing faded letters burned into the back. "Iron Shadows, bound by blood." Eli stared, the world tilting. You came back for me?" Hank smiled faintly. "Looks like we're a few years late, but we keep our word." He put a hand on Eli's shoulder. "Your dad used to talk about you all the time. Said you'd grow up strong, but that the world might test you harder than most. Looks like he was right." The rest of the gang unpacked water bottles, a first aid kit, and a blanket. Rico handed one to Eli. "You're bleeding, kid. Sit." Eli obeyed, watching these men, rough, tattooed, hardened, move with quiet purpose. They weren't what people in Brookdale thought bikers were. They weren't outlaws. They were veterans, brothers, survivors. As Hank cleaned Eli's scraped elbow, he asked, "You get this kind of trouble often?" Eli hesitated, then nodded. "They pick on me at school. They say I don't belong here, that I'm just a charity case." Hank's jaw flexed. "They don't know whose blood runs in your veins." He leaned closer. "Your dad didn't fight for medals, son. He fought for people who couldn't fight back. That's what makes you his legacy. And legacies don't hide, they rise." Eli looked at him, a spark of pride flickering through the pain. Rico chuckled. "You hear that, kid? You got more backbone than half the town." Bull smirked. "We should show those punks what real payback looks like." But Hank shook his head. "No, that's not how Nate would have wanted it. The boy doesn't need vengeance. He needs strength." He turned to Eli. "You know how to ride?" Eli blinked. "A bike?" Hank grinned. "Not that kind. Come here." He walked to his Harley. Black chrome, custom pipes, engine like a beast waiting to wake. He handed Eli the helmet. "Hop on." Eli hesitated. I've never— "You trust me?" Hank asked. After a moment, Eli nodded. "Then trust the ride." The engine roared to life. Eli's heart raced. The vibration under him felt alive, almost human, like the pulse of something greater than fear. Hank revved once, twice, then shot down the dirt trail. Dust flew behind them like smoke. Eli shouted, but this time it wasn't fear. It was freedom. The wind screamed past, the town shrinking behind them. For the first time in his life, no one was laughing. No one was chasing. No one was judging. He was flying. When they stopped, it was at the edge of Lake Juniper, sunlight scattering diamonds across the water. The other riders followed, engines rumbling low like a heartbeat. Hank killed the ignition. "Your dad and I used to come here," he said quietly. Said it reminded him of peace. Eli climbed off, looking out over the lake. "Mom said he was brave." "He was," Hank said. "But you know what he said bravery really was?" Eli shook his head. "Bravery," Hank said slowly, "ain't about throwing punches or talking tough. It's about standing up, even when no one stands with you." The boy's eyes flickered. He thought of the bullies. The laughter. The dirt on his father's photo. He clenched his fists. "I tried to stand. I really did," Hank nodded. "And that's what makes you stronger than them." He pulled something from his pocket. An old patch, frayed at the edges, the symbol of the Iron Shadows. "Your dad wanted you to have this one day. Said it belonged to his son, if the world ever tested him." Eli took it, tracing the silver stitching. "What does it mean?" Hank smiled. "It means you're part of something bigger. And no matter how dark the road gets, you've got riders behind you." That night, Eli sat on his porch, the patch clutched in his hand. His mother listened quietly as he told her everything. The fight, the bikers, the dog tag. When he mentioned Hank's name, her eyes softened. "Nathan used to talk about him, said if anything ever happened, Hank would find his way back." Eli smiled. "He did, but Brookdale wasn't done. Word of the fight spread faster than wildfire. By morning, whispers filled the town. 'Did you hear? That Carter boy brought a biker gang into town. Causing trouble already? Just like his father's kind. Someone needs to put them back in their place.'" The town's prejudice, always simmering beneath polite smiles, began to boil. At school, Travis and his friends returned with bruised egos and twisted stories. "They're criminals," Travis spat. "They threatened us." By lunch, half the cafeteria was whispering. By evening, someone had slashed the tires of 3 of the Iron Shadows bikes outside the diner. Hank didn't retaliate. Neither did the gang. But Eli saw the storm building in their eyes. That night, he found Hank by the bridge again, tightening bolts on his Harley. "They're blaming you," Eli said quietly. Hank sighed. "Doesn't surprise me. People fear what they don't understand." Eli hesitated. "You're not leaving, are you?" Hank shook his head. "Not until I know you're safe." The boy's eyes glistened. "You sound like my dad," Hank smiled faintly. "That's because I promised him I would." Thunder rumbled in the distance, not from the sky, but from engines. The other bikers arrived, parking beside him. Rico muttered, "Cops came by. Said there's talk of a complaint. Looks like someone's stirring trouble." Hank stood tall. "Let them talk. We're not here for a fight." But fate had other plans. As dusk settled, a convoy of pickup trucks rolled down the road, headlights slicing through dust. Travis's father, Councilman Reed, stepped out, face red with anger. Behind him, 3 local men followed, all wearing smug confidence like armor. "You think you can ride into our town and threaten our kids?" he barked. Hank stepped forward, calm but firm. "Your kids beat up a 12-year-old. We just stopped it," Reed scoffed. He got what he deserved. "You people don't belong here." Eli flinched. The words burned. "You people." The air thickened. The bikers stayed silent, engines still humming low like restrained thunder. Then Reed spat. "Pack your trash and get out before someone gets hurt." Eli stepped forward before Hank could. His voice was small but clear. "They saved me," Reed sneered. "Saved you? Boy, you're lucky they didn't get you arrested." Eli clenched his fists. His heart pounded. "They're not the problem. You are." For the first time, Reed's smugness faltered. The bikers exchanged glances. Hank's eyes softened. "Kid's got his father's fire." Reed turned, furious. "You watch your mouth." That's when the engines all roared together. 12 bikes growling in unison, shaking the ground like thunder answering arrogance. The sound drowned out Reed's words. His men stepped back instinctively, and over the noise, Eli said the words that silenced everyone. "My dad fought for this country, for men like you to feel safe, even when you don't deserve it." The engines quieted one by one. Hank's gaze met Eli's. "Your father would have been proud." The confrontation ended with no fists, no weapons, no vengeance, just a boy who stood taller than hate. But the night wasn't over, because what Eli didn't know was that this moment, This stand would ignite something larger than Brookdale could handle. And by dawn, everyone in town would know what it means when the sound of engines becomes the sound of justice. The night cracked open with the sound of sirens and shouting. By sunrise, the story had spread across Brookdale like gasoline meeting flame. Biker gang threatens councilman. Veterans terrorize small town. Black boy caught in the middle. Eli saw the headlines on phones, TVs, and car radios as he walked to school. He felt the stares again. The same ones that once mocked his skin, his clothes, his limp, now mixed with fear and judgment. The whispers hissed as he passed. They say they're ex-military. Probably dangerous. Should have stayed out of it. He kept walking. His father's patch, the Iron Shadow's insignia, was tucked in his pocket like a secret heartbeat. When he entered the cafeteria, the laughter stopped. Travis and his friends sat at their usual table, whispering loud enough for everyone to hear. Look who it is, the charity case with a biker army. Eli didn't look up, but something inside him had shifted. The boy who once shrank was gone. He walked to their table, calm. Travis's grin faltered. What do you want? Eli placed his hand flat on the table. To tell you something my dad taught me. Travis rolled his eyes. What, that noise fixes everything? Eli shook his head slowly. No, that silence can too, if you listen. He leaned closer. You hit me because you think it makes you strong. But real strength? It's what you can hold back. The cafeteria was silent. Even Travis didn't speak. Then, from the hallway, came the rumble. Low and growing. Engines. The students rushed to the windows. Outside, the Iron Shadows were lined up across the front of the school, engines idling like thunder beneath the pavement. Not in anger, not to threaten, but to stand. Eli turned to the window, eyes wide. Hank stood at the front of the line, sunglasses on, arms folded. He wasn't here to fight. He was here to show something. One by one, the bikers removed their vests and jackets, revealing military patches beneath. Army, Marines, Air Force, Navy. Eli froze. The noise outside wasn't rebellion. It was recognition. Travis's friends whispered, Wait, they're vets? Within minutes, the principal burst into the cafeteria, face pale. Everyone, stay calm. But calm had already arrived. Because through the front doors came Hank Dalton himself, escorted by the local sheriff, who happened to be a veteran too. Morning, ma'am, Hank said to the principal. We're not here to cause trouble. We're here to clear a man's name and protect a boy's. Reporters gathered outside. Cameras flashed. The sheriff turned to the crowd. These men are all decorated veterans. They came here to defend a kid who was being harassed, not to start chaos. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The story was changing right before their eyes. Eli stood frozen as Hank looked toward him. You got something to say, son? Eli swallowed. The whole cafeteria was watching. He stepped forward, his small hand gripping his father's patch. My dad was one of them, he said quietly. He fought with Mr. Dalton's unit, and before he died, he told me something. The cameras turned. The crowd leaned in. Eli's voice steadied. He said the world will always have noise, hate, lies, fear. But courage is the only sound that can silence it. He held up the Iron Shadows patch. These men didn't come here to fight. They came to remind us what courage looks like. The silence that followed was electric. No one laughed. No one whispered. Even Travis looked away. And then, from the back of the room, someone started clapping. A teacher, then another, then the students. The applause spread like wildfire until the entire cafeteria was on its feet. Hank nodded once, a soldier's salute without words. Travis sat frozen, eyes wet with something he didn't recognize. Shame. Outside, the bikers revved their engines once more. Not in fury, but in pride, the roar echoing like a heartbeat across the town. Through the windows, sunlight hit the chrome and bounced across the cafeteria walls, painting the faces of every kid who'd ever felt powerless. The roar faded slowly, leaving behind only Eli's voice, quiet but certain. They thought engines made noise, but sometimes they make history. The news broke before noon. Local headlines read, Biker veterans save black teen from bullies. Community learns a powerful lesson. By afternoon, it had gone national. Cameras replayed the moment the engines roared, the way sunlight flashed off chrome and courage. But what people didn't see, what mattered most, was what happened after the noise faded. Hank stood outside the school beneath the shade of a maple tree, arms folded, watching as Eli spoke with reporters. The boy wasn't shaking anymore. He wasn't hiding behind his sleeves or his silence. He spoke clearly. He said he didn't want revenge. He wanted understanding. When a reporter asked, "Do you forgive them?" Eli simply said, "They didn't know me. Now they do." That's enough. The clip went viral. Millions watched a 13-year-old boy stand taller than hate itself. But the real shift didn't happen online. It happened in Brookdale. A week later, the principal invited Hank and the Iron Shadows to speak at a school assembly. Every student, teacher, and parent filled the bleachers. Even Travis sat in the front row, his once arrogant posture replaced by something that looked a lot like humility. Hank stepped to the microphone, his voice calm and low. "I've seen battles overseas and battles in our own backyards," he said. "But the worst ones happen here." He touched his chest. "In hearts that forget what we're fighting for." He turned toward Eli. "This kid reminded us." The gym erupted in applause, but Hank raised a hand. "Applause means nothing if we don't change what happens next." He looked around the room. "So here's what happens next. The Iron Shadows are starting a program, Wheels of Honor, mentorship for kids who've been bullied or left behind. Every weekend, these bikes will ride not for war, but for peace. And every engine will carry a name, of a kid like Eli who refused to stay silent." The crowd stood again. Teachers cried. Students filmed. When the assembly ended, Travis approached Eli quietly. His voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry," he said. "My dad said things at home. I just repeated them." Eli looked at him, not with anger, but with a kind of tired wisdom no kid his age should have to carry. "Then be the one who stops repeating them," he said simply. They shook hands, awkwardly, but genuinely. And somewhere behind them, Hank smiled, that evening. As the sun bled orange over the horizon, Hank and Eli stood beside the line of motorcycles one last time. The Iron Shadows were preparing for their next ride, this one across state lines, where more schools had asked for them to speak. Eli held his father's patch in his hands. Hank kneeled beside him. "You sure you want to give it up?" Hank asked. Eli nodded. "Dad wouldn't want it sitting in a drawer." He handed it over. Hank attached the patch to the inside of his vest, not on the front, but over his heart. "Then he rides with us," Hank said softly. Engines started one by one, the air trembling with low thunder. Eli stepped back as the bikes rolled forward in unison, sunlight catching their mirrors like sparks of memory. He waved until the last one disappeared over the hill. Then, for the first time in months, he felt something new. Not fear, not shame, but belonging. Weeks later, Brookdale High unveiled a new mural in the school courtyard. It showed a young boy standing between two roaring bikes, his reflection cast in chrome and light. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Courage is the sound that silences hate," dedicated to Eli Carter and the Iron Shadows. Students walked past it every morning. Some stopped, some didn't, but every so often, someone would pause, look at the mural, and stand a little taller. Because courage, once heard, never truly fades. And as the camera pulls back, the engines rumble faintly in the distance, echoing across town, across hearts, across time. This is Black Response, where the underestimated rise in hate falls silent. If this story moved you, like, share, and comment "Courage Wins" to show the world that empathy still roars louder than prejudice. And don't forget to watch our previous story, because every voice we lift is one more engine of change.